Bush shadows. At some time or another, it happens to us all. Picnicking, camping, or simply stopping for a rest when travelling. It could be when we're stopping for an overnight, a gravel pit, or somewhere when we're on the road. It's that weird negative vibe, that energy we feel that all is not okay. It's that feeling that here is the potential for harm. It happens close to or far from population areas. When we're alone or in the company of the others, it can be experienced individually or collectively. A simple look on YouTube at caravan camping channels. When they run topics of safety in the bush, nearly all of them say the same thing. If it doesn't feel right, move on. Find another place. These stories are from people who didn't move on and what they experienced. Welcome to Bush Shadows. I'm your host Dave. Today we're sharing a story from the Shark Bay region of Australia, in Western Australia particularly. Give you a bit of a visual on that. If this is Australia that we're seeing on the screen, we'll just zoom in now to the Shark Bay region in Western Australia. And as you can see, it's made up of these couple of peninsulas. It's in here such shallow water, really shallow water in here. Not much deeper in this section here. Very high salinity in this area right here. However, this is where this stories come from today, basically. About the 1970s, there was a lot of activity. People had experiences here, and I found out most of this information from a website called the Australian Yowie Research. I'll put a link in the description below for that one. It's a pretty cool site. They give you experiences of people from Yowies and other things, and they list them state by state, as well as also having some archival news reports and things like that in there. Now, the thing that's been going on in the Shark Bay area at that time in the 70s, I'm not sure if it's clear that it was the same phenomena that was happening or there was something different going on. But what is certain that each person had an experience of some nature, and I'd like to share those stories with you. Just as a side note, if you find this site interesting or useful, please subscribe, tick the notification bell for future episodes. Okay, let's moving on. So the first story comes from a female contributor. There's no name given, but we do know from their words or their text, I suppose, on this thing. They're from the Nagana people in the Shark Bay region, so it's an indigenous population. And she talks about how the elders used to talk about for generations a thing called the Hairyman. But her brother, who was a truck driver at the time, I believe, based on the description here, had an experience. Didn't see anything, but had an experience. So a truck broke down at a place called Hairyman Station. Now, Hairyman Station is in the Shark Bay region, once again, just here. And the truck broke down, so her brother decided to walk into Denham, which Denham is way up here. And the plan was to walk from Hairyman Station about 80 kilometres up to a place here called Nanga. There's a turn off there, and wait to see if they can get a ride into town. But just before Nanga walking in, so they've gone quite a way, they've actually passed an area here called the 40 mile. I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more later, about in depth about that. It's quite significant into some of this story. He felt he's being followed, strange sounds around him gave him a bit of a scare, terrified him is the actual words used, jogged into Nanga to try and get a lift right here. There's a signpost apparently here on the turnoff. However, what's really quite intriguing is at the signpost there was a guttural growling sound. Because of this, her brother ran all the way into Nanga, which at the time is a little sort of a town side or something very small there. I haven't been to Nanga, so I'm not 100% sure about that. But the interesting part of that was, once again, something happened. didn't see, did hear a sound, but had this awesome, overwhelming feeling of being followed, and the sounds around him was enough to sort of thing. They also talk about how there was a well-to-do family. They were camping in a place here called the Big Lagoon. Now, Big Lagoon is also on this same side of the peninsula. Let's just move up here to further up. There we go, right past Denham, which is down here. They were camped here at this place called Big Lagoon. Now, this, I'm assuming, was in the 70s as well. And this was actually written in a letter to the person who was relaying the story's mother. And camping here, they seen something big, hairy, bipedal on the beach that was loping along the beach and went back into the scrub. Once again, they were terrified, and they actually had some sort of a sighting there of what that could have been. Now, the mum who received the letter apparently was an author, and I've done some research trying to find out an author that may have a book with that information in it, unsuccessfully. So I'm not saying it doesn't exist, I just haven't been able to find that. This person also talks about how Barry at the time in Denham was a local store owner, and he also had an encounter, which is in the book, of something, but they don't go into details. So around about the same time there was a couple of experiences going on there, I guess. From there on, I could move into another line of research that I've done, and this is from a news article by Brian Clark. Now, the news article's held on the Australian Yowie research. There's a cutout of it. However, I did have a look for Google for Brian Clark the individual. Cannot find any author there or journalist by that name, but being a small newspaper it may have come from, that's not really surprising. Brian sort of talks about how well known over a century before Europeans settled that there has been this thing called a Hairyman. The unidentified creature has always haunted local waterholes and periodically emerges to search for food. Now, this is in the Shark Bay region that we're getting these stories. It's described as having gruesome features. And there's a place called the 40 Mile Tank. Now, I'm just going to come back to this little thing in here and come down a little bit more here to the 40 Mile Tank. Now, the 40 Mile Tank's an interesting place. Originally, the road in the Shark Bay came along the main road, and past this 40 Mile Tank, it used to be a water tank. You could stop, fill up, get a drink, do things like that, and then it met up with this road again here. So this section through here is pretty new compared to the 40 Mile Tank, and people have reported that they'll not stop at the 40 mile, they just go straight past after a sighting. So it hints that there was a lot more sightings than what we've actually got recorded here. One of the experiences that were mentioned in this article is from John Seliger. He was a former Shire president in Shark Bay, and I did a bit of research to find if I could see that this was who they said he was, and he's referenced in the Legislative Council minutes on Wednesday the 25th of May 1988 re Cyclone Herbie, and he took a tour of the state parliament up through the Shark Bay area to show damage to the fishing industry and to what we call waterlogged houses and things like that. But John Seliger, his story was back in the 1970s, so we're heading back there again. Now, in the Shark Bay region, there's got this island, and it's called Dirk Hartog. Now, it sits right up the inside of this outside peninsula, and there's a water gap here between the two. Now, this is quite a navigable channel that you can get vessels in and out, so it's not all that shallow, I guess, in that sense. But he was working on a pastoral lease there, because Dirk Hartog now is a national park, but back then it was actually a working station. And he heard noises coming from the kitchen, and he described them as being peculiar. Now, this is all in that newspaper article. So he hurried over to investigate, and there was food scattered over the floor and things like that. But the thing that really gave him a shake, I think, was something frightening that he described as a shadow disappeared out of the door. So when we look at it in that way, the Shire, or the former Shire Presenter, in 1988, we know he was still seeing, so I'm wondering if he was Shire President in the 70s. There was no date seen on the news article. You could see where it was, but it was only half a date, so I couldn't really tell what date that was actually reported. He also talks about a married couple who were camping near Woodley Station on the Wooramel River. Now, the Woodley Station, similar type of area to Shark Bay. It's a little bit inland from all of that. If I was to move over to this section here and come up a little bit, let's let this load. There's Woodley Station here, and there's the Wooramel River. So somewhere on this station, I'm guessing probably at this point here. Now that's only my guess. I really don't know if that's true or not. A married couple were camped there. Their dog started to howl. They experienced an uncomfortable feeling, like there was something weird. And that's exactly the sensation I've been talking about when you travel around Australia. And I'm not sure if it happens in other countries. I'm sure it might. However, you pull up, you don't feel right. You know there's something not right there. They thought it was safer to move to another campsite, so they did. And they felt better. Now, the things I'd like to get is, one, a date on the newspaper article. I do know that John Seliger was in the role of Shire President at the time of this. But the date ranges seem to be all around about the 1970s and in that area. So based on that, I'm just wondering what it was that was going on in this region, or what could have been in this area. In that newspaper article, there's an interesting comment, and the comment is with the journalist, the reporter says to John Seliger and says, could this just be a tourist, thing to try and get some tourism into Shark Bay? He said, I'll tell you what, we'll put you out the night by the 40 Mile water tank and see if you're still there in the morning. Thanks for listening.